Kofi woke up early, as he always did. The sun was just rising over Suna, painting the sky in soft orange and pink. He stretched and smiled, listening to the familiar sounds of his town coming to life. The distant calls of market sellers setting up their stalls, the hum of motorcycles on the road, the laughter of children walking to school. Life in Suna was good. Kofi worked as a bank manager, a job he had held for nearly 10 years. He was respected in the community, known for his honesty and hard work. His salary wasn't that huge, but it was enough to pay for their comfortable house, enough to put food on the table, enough to send money back to his aging parents in the village. He walked into the kitchen, where Natasha was already preparing breakfast. The smell of fried plantains and beans filled the air. "Good morning, my love," Kofi said, kissing her cheek. Natasha turned and smiled, but her eyes held something else, a restless energy. "Morning," she said. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby," Kofi replied, sitting down at their small wooden table. Natasha placed a plate in front of him and sat across from him. She didn't eat right away. Instead, she stared out the window, her fingers tapping lightly against the table. Kofi knew that look. She was thinking about it again. Another letter came from Emma yesterday. Natasha said suddenly. Emma was her childhood friend who had moved to Europe 2 years ago. Every few months, she sent long letters, full of stories about her big house, her easy job, her new car. Kofi chewed slowly. "Oh, how is she?" Natasha's eyes lit up. "She's doing amazing, Kofi. She just bought a new car. Can you believe it? And her daughter is in a private school now. The pictures she sent." She pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. Kofi looked at the photos. Emma standing in front of a large house, her daughter in a neat school uniform, a shiny car parked in the driveway. "It's nice," he said carefully. "Nice." Natasha laughed. "Kofi, it's more than nice. Look at how they're living. And remember Kwame's sister? She went to America last year, and now she's sending money back to build a house for their parents." Kofi sighed. He had heard this before. "Natasha, we have a good life here," he said gently. "We're not rich, but we're comfortable. We have family here. Our jobs are stable." Natasha's smile faded. "Comfortable isn't enough. Kofi, don't you want more? Don't you want our children to have the best schools? The best future?" Kofi hesitated. He was happy in Suna. He loved his town, his job, his family. But Natasha's words planted a seed of doubt. What if she's right? What if we're missing out? That evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Natasha brought it up again. "Kofi," she said softly, "just think about it. We're still young. If we go now, we can build a new life, a better life." Kofi looked at her. Her hopeful eyes had determined expression. He loved her. He wanted her to be happy. And so, slowly, her dream started to become his dream too. "But where would we even go?" he asked. Natasha grinned. "Emma said she can help us. She knows people. We can get visas, find jobs. It's possible, Kofi. We can have that life too." Kofi took a deep breath. The idea was scary. Leaving everything he knew, starting over in a strange land. But Natasha's excitement was contagious. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's think about it." Natasha threw her arms around him. "You won't regret this, Kofi. I promise you, this is the best decision we'll ever make." Kofi hugged her back, but in his heart, a small voice whispered, "I hope you're right." For weeks after that first conversation, Kofi tossed and turned at night, his mind racing with doubts. He would wake up in the dark hours before dawn, staring at the ceiling, listening to Natasha's steady breathing beside him. Are we making a mistake? During the day, he tried to focus on work, approving loans, meeting with clients, managing his team at the bank. But his thoughts kept drifting. He would catch himself staring out his office window, watching the bustling streets of Suna below, the market women balancing baskets on their heads, the old men playing draughts under the mango tree, the children running home from school, their laughter ringing through the air. This was his home. But every evening, Natasha would bring it up again. "Kofi, Emma sent another message today. She said one night as they ate dinner, she says there's a bank hiring in her city. They need someone with your experience. Kofi pushed his food around his plate. It's not that simple, Natasha. We can't just pack up and go. Why not? Natasha's voice rose. What's holding us here? Natasha reached across the table and took his hand. Her touch was warm, familiar. Kofi, she said softly, I want more for us. Don't you? And that was the problem. Kofi did want more. For her. He wanted to see her happy, to give her everything she dreamed of. So, one evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and purple, Kofi made up his mind. Okay, he said quietly. Let's do it. Natasha's face lit up like the sun itself. She threw her arms around him, laughing. You won't regret this, Kofi. I promise. The next week, they met with a travel agent, a slick man named Mr. Boateng, who had helped many people relocate abroad. He laid out their options, the costs, the paperwork. It won't be cheap, Mr. Boateng warned, adjusting his glasses. Visas, flights, initial housing. You'll need at least $15,000 just to start. Kofi swallowed hard. That was nearly all their savings. Natasha didn't hesitate. We'll sell the house, she said firmly. Kofi's stomach twisted. This house, the one they had saved for years to buy, the one where they had dreamed of raising children, was their biggest asset. But Natasha was already making plans. We can stay with my sister until we leave. The money from the sale will cover everything. Kofi nodded slowly. There was no turning back now. When Kofi told his parents, the reaction was immediate. His father, a tall, broad-shouldered man who had worked as a farmer his whole life, stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. You're selling your house? To go where? Abroad? Papa, Kofi said. To Europe. Natasha has a friend there who... Europe. His mother clutched her chest. My son, do you know how many people go there and suffer? How many end up on the streets? Kofi held up his hands. Mama, it's not like that anymore. People succeed all the time. Emma and Kwame's sister. Stories, his father interrupted. You're listening to stories, Kofi. What you have here is real. A good job, a home, family. Kofi sighed. Papa, I know you're worried, but this is our chance of something better. His father's face darkened. Better? What is better than what you have? You think money is everything. Kofi didn't answer. He didn't think money was everything, but he wanted Natasha's happiness. He wanted the future she dreamed of. His mother took his hand, her eyes wet with tears. At least wait a little longer. Think about it more. Kofi kissed her forehead. We've already decided, Mama. Selling the house was harder than Kofi expected. He hadn't realized how many memories were tied to those walls. The laughter they'd shared with friends over dinners, the quiet mornings drinking tea on the porch, the nights they'd spent talking about their dreams. As they packed their belongings, Kofi found old photos, their wedding day, Natasha grinning in her white dress, him looking proud in his suit. They had been so young, so full of hope. We still are, he told himself. This is just a new chapter. Natasha, meanwhile, was buzzing with excitement. She sold their furniture, their extra clothes, even some of their kitchenware. We'll buy new things there, she said. Better things. The day they handed over the keys to the new owners, Kofi stood in the empty living room one last time. The walls echoed with his footsteps. Natasha slipped her hand into his. It's just a house, Kofi. We'll have a new home soon. Kofi squeezed her hand. He wanted to believe her. At the airport, Kofi's parents clung to him. His mother pressed a small wooden carving into his palm. A lion, the symbol of their family. For protection, she whispered. His father, usually so strong, had tears in his eyes. If things don't work out, come home. Promise me. Kofi nodded, his throat tight. I promise. Then the announcements blared over the speakers. Their flight was boarding. Natasha tugged his arm. Come on, Kofi. This is it. With one last look at his parents, at the land he had called home his entire life, Kofi turned and followed Natasha toward the gate. Their new life was waiting. The airplane touched down with a gentle bump, jolting Kofi awake. He rubbed his eyes and peered out the window. A sprawling city stretched before him. Towering glass buildings glittered under the morning sun. Endless streams of cars flowed along wide highways, and people in crisp suits hurried along crowded sidewalks. Natasha squeezed his arm, her eyes wide with excitement. "We're here. Kofi, look at it." Kofi nodded, but his throat felt tight. Everything was so big, so fast, so different. The airport alone was overwhelming. Signs in a language Kofi barely understood flashed overhead. The lines at immigration snaked endlessly, filled with tired travelers clutching passports. When it was their turn, the officer eyed their documents skeptically. "Purpose of visit?" the man asked, his accent sharp. "Work," Kofi said confidently. "I'm a banker. My wife." The officer stamped their papers without looking up. "Next." Outside, the air was colder than Kofi expected. He shivered in his light jacket as they loaded their suitcases into a taxi. "Look at those buildings." Natasha gasped, pressing her face to the window as a car sped into the city. "And the shops? Oh, that one sells designer bags. Emma told me about that place." Kofi tried to share her enthusiasm, but his stomach churned. The taxi fare alone cost what would have been a week's wages back home. Their apartment turned out to be a single room in a cramped building, with a mattress on the floor and a hot plate for cooking. The bathroom was down the hall, shared with 6 other units. Natasha's smile faltered for the first time. "It's temporary," she said firmly. The next morning, Kofi put on his best suit, the one he'd worn to important meetings at the bank in Suna. He polished his shoes until they shone. "I'll find work quickly," he told Natasha. "Then we can get a proper place." But the city didn't care about his confidence. At the first bank, the receptionist took one look at his resume and said, "You'll need local certification." At the second, "No openings." At the third, "We don't sponsor visas." By the 5th rejection, Kofi's collar felt too tight. He bought a cheap coffee and sat on a park bench, watching well-dressed professionals stride past. Back home, he'd been someone. Here, he was invisible. Weeks passed, and their savings were running out. Natasha got a job first, helping an elderly woman with shopping and housekeeping. The pay was minimal, but it was something. "You'll find something soon," Natasha assured him, though her voice lacked its usual spark. Kofi expanded his search. Retail, office work, anything. Finally, a cafe manager shrugged. "I need a dishwasher. Starts tomorrow. Cash only." That night, Kofi stared at his reflection in their tiny bathroom mirror. His hands, the ones that had once signed loan approvals, would soon be scrubbing plates. The restaurant kitchen was a sweaty, chaotic hell. Steam billowed from industrial dishwashers. Chefs barked orders in a language Kofi only half understood. "Faster!" the manager snapped as Kofi fumbled with a stack of plates. By closing time, his back ached, his fingers were pruned from soapy water, and his dress shirt reeked of grease. The manager counted out wrinkled bills, barely enough for a day's food. Natasha was waiting up when he returned. She took one look at his exhausted face and didn't ask questions. This was not the life they had dreamed of. The small apartment felt like a prison. Kofi came home from another long day washing dishes, his hands raw and aching. The smell of cheap soap clung to his skin. Natasha was already home, which was rare these days. She sat on the edge of their mattress, scrolling through her phone. When Kofi walked in, she didn't even look up. "I'm home," he said quietly. "I see that," Natasha replied, her voice flat. Kofi sighed and sat down beside her. "How was work?" Natasha finally looked at him, her eyes sharp. "Work? You mean cleaning up after that old woman? It's humiliating. Kofi, is this what we came here for?" Kofi rubbed his tired face. "I know it's hard, but what?" Natasha snapped. "You promised me a better life. Look at us. We're worse off than we were in Suna." Her words stung. Kofi had tried everything, applying for better jobs, networking, even begging for more hours at the restaurant. But nothing worked. "I'm trying, Natasha," he said, his voice strained. She stood up, her anger filling the tiny room. "Trying isn't enough. You were supposed to take care of me." Kofi's chest tightened. He had given up everything for her, his job, his home, his family, and now she blamed him for their struggles. Days passed, and Natasha grew colder. She came home late, sometimes not until morning. When Kofi asked where she'd been, she would roll her eyes. "Out," she'd say. "Not that it's your business." Then the rumor started. One evening, Kofi ran into a man from their neighborhood at the market. "Ah, Kofi," the man said, shaking his head. "I saw your wife the other night. With that banker, the rich one. They looked close." Kofi's stomach dropped. He wanted to punch something, but he forced himself to stay calm. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. That night, he waited for Natasha, his heart pounding. When she finally walked in, smelling of expensive perfume, he couldn't stay silent. "Natasha," he said, his voice shaking, "are you seeing someone else?" She didn't deny it. She just looked at him, her expression cold. "You're not the man I married," she said. "I deserve better." Kofi felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. The next few weeks were hell. Natasha barely spoke to him. She came and went as she pleased, ignoring Kofi completely. Then, one evening, everything fell apart. Kofi was cooking a simple meal when the police knocked on the door. "Kofi Mensah," one officer asked. "Yes." "You're under arrest for domestic violence." Kofi's blood ran cold. "What?" "No, I've never hurt her." Natasha stood behind the officers, tears streaming down her face. "He hit me," she whispered. "I was so scared." Kofi couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had never raised a hand to her, never even thought about it. But the police didn't care. Without proper papers, Kofi had no rights. They handcuffed him and dragged him away as Natasha watched, her face blank. The next few days were a blur. Kofi sat in a cold cell, waiting for someone to listen to him. But no one did. "You will be sent back to your country," an officer finally told him. Kofi didn't fight it. His heart was already broken. The plane ride back to Suna felt like a nightmare. Kofi stared out the window, numb. His parents were waiting at the airport. His mother took one look at him and burst into tears. "I warned you about her," she cried, pulling him into a tight hug. Kofi didn't speak. He had no words left. The first few weeks were hard. Kofi barely left the house. He felt ashamed, like a failure. But slowly, he began to pick up the pieces. His old boss at the bank heard what happened and offered him his job back, with a promotion. "You're a good man, Kofi," his boss said. "We need you here." Kofi accepted. He threw himself into work, saving money and helping his parents. One evening, as he sat on his parents' porch, watching the sunset, his father joined him. "You're stronger now," his father said quietly. Kofi nodded. He was. Natasha had taken everything from him, but she couldn't take his future. Meanwhile, Natasha was happy Kofi was gone. She thought she was free to be with her secret lover, Kwame. She stretched out on the bed, now all hers, and smiled. No more listening to Kofi's tired complaints. No more pretending to care about his struggles. She picked up a phone and dialed Kwame's number, her heart racing with excitement. "Kwame, it's me," she said, her voice sweet. "He's gone. We can finally be together properly now." There was silence on the other end. Then Kwame laughed, a cold, mocking sound that made Natasha's stomach drop. "Natasha, don't be foolish," he said. "I have a wife. Children. Did you really think I would leave them for you?" The words hit her like a slap. "But you said—" "I said what you wanted to hear," Kwame interrupted. "You were fun, but this was never serious." Then the line went off. Natasha sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her hand shook. Everything, the lies to Kofi, the police report, the betrayal, had been for nothing. The days that followed were bitter. The small apartment felt too quiet without Kofi's presence. Natasha's job caring for the elderly woman barely paid enough for rent, and without Kofi's income, she fell behind quickly. Her so-called friends, the ones who had encouraged her to leave Kofi, suddenly stopped answering her calls. One evening, as she counted the loss of her money, the landlord banged on her door. "Rent is due tomorrow," he said sharply. "No more delays." Natasha nodded, but inside, she was panicking. She had nowhere to go. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Memories flooded her mind. Kofi cooking her favorite meals. Kofi holding her when she was scared. Kofi smiling at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. She had thrown it all away. For what? A man who never cared about her. A dream that was never real. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had made her choice. Now, she had to live with it. The sun rose over Suna, painting the sky in warm gold. Kofi sat on his parents' porch, sipping sweet tea. The familiar sounds of his hometown surrounded him. Children laughing on their way to school, market women calling out prices, the steady rhythm of life continuing as it always had. His mother placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're quiet this morning," she said. Kofi smiled. "Just thinking." He was thinking about everything that had happened. The dreams he and Natasha had shared. The promises they'd made. The way it had all fallen apart. At first, the pain had been sharp. Kofi had trusted Natasha completely. He'd given up his home, his job, his entire life for her. And in the end, she had thrown him away like he meant nothing. But now, months later, the pain had faded. In its place was something more valuable, understanding. "Not everyone who says they love you really does," Kofi said to his mother. "Some people only love what you can give them." His mother nodded wisely. "This is true, my son. But now you know, and knowing is power." Kofi took a deep breath. The air smelled like fresh earth and blooming flowers. He was home. He was safe. And he was stronger than before. The next week, Natasha packed her bags. There was no point staying in this country anymore. As she dragged her suitcase to the bus station headed to the airport, she passed a cafe, the same one where Kofi had worked as a dishwasher. She hesitated, then kept walking. She had lost everything. And the worst part? She had no one to blame but herself.